Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Prella.
And my name is Janet Carr. Welcome to another episode of the Women in 3D Printing podcast. In spirit of the upcoming TIPE 3D Printing virtual conference taking place January 27 to 28th next year, 2021, we are going to be dedicating the first series to the TIPE. So you might be wondering, what is the TIPE? TIPE represents the tracks for the conference: technology, industry, people, and economics.
And as your hosts, we are so excited to share our conversations with these trailblazing women. The all-female speaker lineup we have prepared for this conference is made up of women that have carved their careers in additive manufacturing and have inspired all of us. We can't wait to introduce them to you so you can get to know them before the conference.
So we invite you to hit that subscribe button, follow us on LinkedIn, and get to know the stories of these awe-inspiring women before the event.
We'd also like to give a shout out to our platinum sponsors, HP, Trumpf, Matter Hackers, GE Additive, and Dassault for making all of this even possible.
Thank you, Ashley Totin, for joining us in our Women in 3D Printing podcast series. Ashley Totin is the project engineer at America Makes, developing a digital additive manufacturing program to enable the Army supply chain. We're really excited to have you here joining the TIPE conference and sharing your story so you can inspire folks to follow you and also learn more about what you're going to talk about coming up next in January 2021. So before we get started, Ashley, just want to know, what launched your career in additive manufacturing? How did you get into STEM? How did this all happen?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to tell my story. My story with engineering, I didn't even know what engineering was until someone actually brought it up to me. So I was on a path to go into veterinarian and loved animals and everything. And then one of my teachers in high school, it was my math teacher, she actually was the one, have you ever looked at engineering? And I didn't even know what that was back then, and that just, sparked that interest. But I'll focus on additive manufacturing right now. And it kind of all started when I was going to college at Youngstown State University for my undergraduate degree of industrial and systems engineering. The first couple years of college, I started to fall in love with this whole idea of manufacturing. I turned into this manufacturing girl. I loved every aspect of manufacturing facilities and assembly lines and how product got made. I mean, every item in our life, this computer, my clothes I'm wearing, the chair I'm sitting in, everything besides the living organisms outside really get passed through a manufacturing facility, even most of the food we eat. So I was just, so interested with every aspect of manufacturing. I'd love to go to all the facilities and watch things actually being produced. So during that same time in my college career, the flagship Manufacturing USA Institute was also being stood up. And this institute was 5 minutes from my university. At that time, I had no idea the institute existed. And back then, the institute was called the National Additive Manufacturing Innovation Institute. It was called NAMI for short. I actually had the opportunity to tour NAMI, and now it's called America Makes. This was the first time I saw a 3D printer during that tour. I saw this small box, a 1 foot by 1 foot cube, producing a part layer by layer right before my eyes. I was blown away. I instantly fell in love with this technology and I had to get involved. So through my college career, I had a few manufacturing internships and I ended up grabbing an internship at America Makes. It was 2014 and I was hired as an intern for workforce and education outreach. I was actually in charge of developing educational materials related to additive manufacturing. What amazes me most about this technology is how fast it is moving. So back then, when I was tasked, to develop these curriculum, I went on to Google to see what I could find. I searched all kinds of things and couldn't find any curriculum out there. So I had to develop and sculpt this curriculum from scratch. I had to be creative and figure out some cool ways to engage the younger generation. Now, if you look and Google curriculum for additive manufacturing today, there are just thousands of resources, which is really neat to see how fast this technology is moving, and that's in all aspects of additive manufacturing. So I developed some curriculum for teachers and actually hosted a few workshops and trainings related to additive manufacturing. I had some summer camps specifically focused on STEM and manufacturing for girls, which was awesome. And not only did I develop, this passion for additive manufacturing, but I also realized I had a passion for teaching and inspiring the younger generation. So that's how I initially got started, and I wanted, to continue. So I actually found some research opportunities in my undergraduate degree at YSU to really start focusing and researching additive manufacturing. So once I graduated with my bachelor's, I then decided to go for my master's, and my thesis focused on additive manufacturing as well. So this was more on additive manufacturing business case. And after I graduated with my master's, I actually got a job with the Youngstown Business Incubator and continued doing some business case analysis, and actually worked on an America Makes project related to additive manufacturing spare parts for the U.S. Air Force, which was really fascinating. We got to, fly all over to the different depots and identify their pain points and how we could, additively manufacture some spare parts for them. So that was really awesome. And I was with the Youngstown Business Incubator for 2 years when I was offered a project engineering job at America Makes. So I took that job, and that's where I am today. So I've been with America Makes for 1.5 years, and it is amazing to see all of the research, creation, and innovation taking place in this technology. My current position is managing a U.S. Army program focused on prototyping a digital additive manufacturing supply chain. So I am so excited to see what the future holds in regards to this technology, and I'm so blessed to be a part of Women in 3D Printing, where I have a great group of women who share the same passion. So thank you.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. You're kind of going full circle with America Makes here, aren't you?
Yeah, not only America Makes, but really that ecosystem that's been, kind of forming in Youngstown. So first it was, the establishment of America Makes in 2012, and then all these research professors started coming to YSU for all these research opportunities and additive. So I got to experience that. And then the Youngstown Business Incubator, a little bit background on them is, they are the house for, startups, and they have a whole section of 3D printing startup companies. So that's really interesting too. So you have all these entities in Youngstown and all these jobs coming back to the Valley, and it's been really interesting to see it all evolving around additive manufacturing. So it's been an awesome experience.
It seems like a lot of government programs or educational programs really impact creation of jobs or technical capabilities of additive manufacturing. Do you agree, or you have a different point of view?
I definitely agree with that. There are so many different aspects of additive manufacturing and the job opportunities that come because of the industry. I mean, there's a lot of research going on right now in additive manufacturing and the government side of things and industry and academia. I mean, every time, I get a chance to talk to, some students, I tell them, you just got to keep looking, don't give up. They're out there. You just got to figure out where they're at. But yeah, there's so many opportunities.
What is everyone researching? What are the challenges they're trying to overcome?
There are quite a few challenges right now, I would say, in additive manufacturing, and America Makes is definitely one of those entities really trying to bridge those gaps with, looking at design, process, materials, stuff like that. One of the, specific challenges that I'm seeing in my current work right now, working with this kind of supply chain program is the whole digital aspect of additive manufacturing, and this word that everyone refers to of the digital thread. And what is the digital thread? How does it work? How do we get it up? And there are so many people, researching that. When you look at the digital thread, there are so many different aspects of it. So you can have, the design, which is kind of the first step, designing it apart additively. You have traditional design, and now we're switching over to additive. So how does that look? How do we capture the design portion? And that goes through, simulation. Then you have preparation of your AM parts, then you have the actual sourcing of your AM parts, production, delivery of the part, qualification and certification, maintenance, and then sustainment. So all of those pieces really make up this digital thread. So when you think of that, that's a lot of pieces. So how do they all work, and how can we connect them all digitally, linking them together? So that's one of the pieces I'm working on, and we are definitely not looking at that entire digital thread, because that is a huge huge piece to bite off at this point. So we're really focused on kind of 3 areas, really looking at the sourcing, production, and delivery, and how do all those link together? How do we connect them? How do we source competent parts? Really is the ideal question we're asking. But I can pick a piece of any of those pieces of the digital thread and look at the challenges. I mean, going way back to design, and traditionally designs were on pieces of paper in 2D, and now we need to switch over to 3D modeling. And when you think of 3D modeling, then you think of your technical data packages, and how do we make those 3D as well, and how do they get sent electronically? So there are just a lot of hurdles to overcome. And whether it is a hurdle with the digital thread that I'm discussing, or workforce and education, cybersecurity, there are so many areas right now being worked on, and multiple organizations are doing this research. And what I would like to see in the industry is more of the collaboration of the research. So we're all kind of working on the same thing, and instead of us all reinventing the wheel, let's share our successes and failures, so that we lift everyone at the same time, and can achieve great strides in this technology.
Speaking of some of the failures, are there certain failures that turn into successes that you see happen across the industry, or even within your own work?
Yes. So in terms of additive manufacturing failures, and just this industry as a whole, we are definitely in the development and evolution of the technology. So every failure that we do have comes great successes. So we need to have these struggles, we need to have these failures, we need to figure out what's the right path and what's the wrong path. And I can connect that directly with what I'm doing in my life. I'm a learner. I love to learn every day. I love to learn from my mistakes. So the best lessons stay with you when you kind of are failing. I'm early in my career, and I am sure I will have many more mistakes, but I will not give up and continue to push forward. And that is, exactly how this entire additive manufacturing industry is kind of going. There are a lot of hurdles. I mean, there are just so many aspects of this technology, so many industries apart, whether it's medical, automotive, aerospace, construction. There are so many different, industries getting involved. So you might get knocked down, but just keep pushing forward. And as long as you have a passion and love what you're doing, you'll continue to drive towards those goals.
Especially on the digital supply chain side, are there certain future developments you're most excited about? I know, especially with American Makes, you guys do a lot of collaborations with NIST and machine manufacturers and OEMs, bringing industry together. What's the future looking like, and what should we all look forward to? or realize we need to add value to?
If you look at the industry, there are a lot of equipment manufacturers out there, and they're all producing these pieces of equipment and, you know, standardizing them and getting them out there. And what we need more is the development of these AM standards. So you'll see kind of the history of additive. There was a huge focus on the polymer industry of additive probably like 10 years ago, where everyone was getting into polymer printing. There were a few standards developed, and you know, we have those kind of baselined at that point. Now it's shifting to metal, and it shifted to metal probably 5 years ago, where there is just this huge push in the metal industry for the development of these standards, because in the end, you know, like I'll go back to the government, the end goal is that they can get a part off of these printers and qualify and certify it. So that is the big picture. And in order to do that, we need to develop these standards across these pieces of equipment so we can then again, you know, source with confidence. How do we develop these standards, and what are we looking at? And there's been a few America Makes projects that have focused specifically on repeatability. You know, how do we set one machine up and another machine up and get the same outcome? How does that look? What parameters do we need to be looking at, and how do we standardize this? And, you know, some projects have been from, you know, the same equipment manufacturer, two of the same machines in maybe two different locations. You set the same parameters up and see if you can achieve that part. Well, now what if we add, you know, a laser powder bed machine of one equipment manufacturer and a laser powder bed machine of another? How do we obtain the same results from those two different machines? So it's all about repeatability and developing the standards. And in order to get to that standard, all this research needs to be happening, and it is. So, you know, there might not be a lot of, let's say, you know, directed energy deposition machines on the market that, you know, you can purchase and put in your facility and know you're getting these standardized parts. And that's because right now there is just this huge focus on research. So there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff happening. So just be prepared, you know, in the next 10 years for more standardized machines to come out, and in the industry to start coming down to, you know, this more area of commercialized systems. There's just so much development going on, and that's really the exciting part. And I highly suggest, you know, anyone to start looking at the research being done. And you can go to the America Makes website and get a gist of different project calls coming out and how you can be a part of this ever-evolving technology. So there's just a lot going on, and I would say, you know, really focused on those development of the standards and getting those, you know, defined will really help this entire industry move forward.
Who gets involved with standards, and which standards are requiring more folks to add value with?
You could go and look at all the different standards, search for additive manufacturing. You'll get a whole list of different standards available, whether it's in, you know, directed energy deposition and those beginning standards, or laser powder bed fusion, material extrusion. There's a lot of activity going on, and when you really start digging into those standards, you'll see, you know, all of the different parameters that really go into each process and why we need these standards. I mean, just top of my head, directed energy deposition is a process where once you start kind of looking into it, you know, not only do you have this AM process, but it can have, you know, 4 different heat sources. So you have an electron beam, you have a laser, you have plasma, all these different energy sources that are considered directed energy deposition. So how does each one of those energy sources affect the build? There is just so many different you know, components that go into all these different processes, and you know, getting to that qualification, certification of these builds is where a lot of these organizations are heading to.
So let's say you're someone that wants to get into additive manufacturing. What are 3 tips that you could suggest them?
3 tips I would give anyone, looking to get into additive would be: first, don't be afraid of change. So with additive manufacturing, this technology is changing every day. A machine you buy today is going to be outdated, in less than a year. So you have to be willing to accept change and, tweak what you're doing to get up to speed with the technology. And whether this is, material development, process development, the machines as a whole, there's just so much research going on that you have to be willing to accept that change. And I had the opportunity, earlier in my college career to be a part of a lot of the traditional manufacturing facilities. So I had a few internships and got to see, these assembly lines and the way the shop floor people, did their tasks. And me coming in as a young girl and wanting to implement some Six Sigma and Lean, changes to their facility was not something they wanted, to be a part of. And that's kind of, when you think of traditional versus additive, you have traditional manufacturing, which has existed for thousands of years, going back to, sand casting and all the other traditional manufacturing processes. And over all of these years, thousands of years, we've perfected these traditional manufacturing processes, whether it's sand casting or investment casting, injection molding. And we've come up with the standards, and everyone has been working towards that, and everyone understands those technologies. And now, within the last 20 years, we've added 7 additive manufacturing processes to our toolbox of manufacturing. So we are early in additive manufacturing, and there is going to be a lot of evolution over these next 5, 10, 20 years. So just be willing to accept and be excited for this technology. That would be my first thing. Don't be afraid of change. And then I kind of hinted on it. The second thing is traditional manufacturing. I would suggest anyone who's looking into additive to also get a background of traditional as well. Understand how manufacturing has evolved, all of the industrial revolutions, how we've overcome all of these impacts. And once you understand that baseline, then you'll be able to, utilize what you learn from traditional into additive. And one example, I can give personally is one of the projects was understanding how to utilize additive manufacturing for tooling. So when you look at tooling is produced traditionally, whether it's sand casting, patterns, molds and cores, investment casting with the wax patterns, injection molding tools, all these things are traditionally produced. But now we can utilize additive manufacturing to produce that tooling, reduce the lead time, the investment costs of these pieces of tooling, and definitely having that background of how all of these traditional manufacturing processes play a role helped, implement those additive manufacturing processes well. So don't be afraid of change, understand traditional manufacturing. And then the third thing I would say is research. And that tip can be utilized for a lot of different things. But when I talk about research, I would like to emphasize in terms of procuring a additive manufacturing machine. So I've seen over my experience, people are very excited about the technology. They buy a piece of equipment. They might not buy the correct piece of equipment, and then this 3D printer is sitting in the corner of their facility. because they didn't look at the different 7 additive manufacturing processes and which one really fits into their, facility. They didn't identify pain points that they had, and really, what is the application for additive manufacturing? Do you have low volume? Do you have very complex parts? Customization? These are things you should be considering when looking at procuring a 3D printer. A lot of people also think, you buy the printer, you sit it down, you push go, and it prints your parts. And definitely we're getting to that for the desktop printing, but once you get into these industrial size printers and you're dealing with the metal powders and all these different energy sources, there's a lot of tweaking, and you need to be willing to work with your printer to obtain those parts and quality you want to get out of your machine. So a lot of different pros and cons. You want to look at all of those and understand what piece of equipment fits your facility correctly. And additive manufacturing is amazing, and everyone wants to buy a machine to be a part of this industry. But it is important to see if the technology makes sense for you, because we don't want people to procure a machine and then get a bad taste in their mouth of this technology because it just wasn't the right technology. So I highly suggest everyone going out, researching all of the aspects of an additive manufacturing piece of equipment before getting one into your facility.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else you'd like to share, Ashley?
I am just super excited for this conference. Can't wait to be a part of it and learn all of the different aspects. And we have a great group of speakers, so just highly encourage everyone to sign up and listen in, and hopefully you'll learn a few things that you can take back to your workplace.
Thanks again for joining us at the Women in 3D Printing Podcast TIPE Series. If you like the content, please hit that subscribe button, follow us on LinkedIn or other social media platforms.
We'd also like to give a shout out to our platinum sponsors, HP, Trump, GE Additive, Matter Hackers, and Dassault for making all of this even possible. So mark your calendars for January 27th to 28th next year in 2021.
And visit us at type3dprinting.com to save your seat. And feel free to drop us a line if you have any questions or feedback.